Hello again, everybody. Welcome to XS Exceed, the show where I, Gearface, have tricked an expert into wasting their time teaching a scuffed Exceed player how to play a character of their choice. Today, I'm sitting down with Reggie again to go over Fight, a robot named um,
His
uh,
name is actually Fight Smith.
Fight Smith. Okay, so the title of the game is not a lie, which is good to know.
Yep.
Reggie, thank you for being willing to sit down with me. Really appreciate it. Really looking forward to the lesson.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I'm expecting the $250 million you promised me.
Yep,
I will be
absolutely.
checking my bank account.
But I
Um,
promised fame and glory from my 15 or more subscribers. I didn't say anything about money.
you can't prove that.
That's fair. You just immediately end the call. Um,
Yeah, I'm gone.
yeah,
Bye.
Reggie's out. I'll run the lesson myself. Quick disclaimer before we get started. We're going to be talking about playing to win here, which you don't have to do in Exceed. Exceed is a fun game. You can play it for fun. Some of the things that we're talking about uh, might engender themselves well to fun play. Some of them might make you lose some friends. You know, play the game the way that you want to play with the in the atmosphere you want to play it. Um, on top of that, we're going to be talking kind of prescriptively about strategy here. This is almost always the right way to play. This is almost never the right way to play. Things like that. Um, take that with a grain of salt. This is Reggie's rules on how to play Fight. They don't have to be yours. Exceed is definitely not a solved game. If you come up with a line, if you think that our line of play is wrong, or if you come up with a line of play that is more to your liking, please play that line. And then
And tell me
tell us
about it.
tell us what we
Yeah.
did wrong. Absolutely, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. Exceed is a highly conditional game. Uh, Character by character, situation by situation. There are things that are in one situation I would go, that's an awful, terrible move, and in another I'd be super impressed by.
Right,
So even these things I say in this lesson, particularly this lesson actually, will be conditional based on you know what your hand is, what the positioning is, what your opponent is. They're just rules of thumb, basically.
right. Put an asterisk next to almost everything that we're saying in this lesson, especially.
Uh, make all my words asterisks. Censor
Okay,
everything I
censor
say.
everything. You got it. And a completely unlistenable Exceed lesson. Sounds perfect. It'll only be for me.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
so,
No, yeah,
uh,
no, this is public.
oh,
Yeah.
oh God! People are
Reggie
gonna know
ends
my secret.
Reggie ends the call again. I have to run the lesson myself again. All
But
right,
yeah, so we're on to a robot named Fight Smith.
yes.
One of the two promos from season 4. Uh, I've just given you his a reference if you wish to fan it out.
Absolutely.
Um, he has a pretty simple ability. It is when you set your attack, spend up to 2 force for +1 power each. And then when he exceeds, he puts up to 2 continuous boosts from discard, hand, or gauge into play without paying their costs, which is put into play. That is reminder text for put into play. And then when you set your attack, spend up to +3 power of +3 force. Spend up to 3 force for +1 power each. God, my brain. Yeah. So basically, you can spend 1 or 2 force on front side and get a power for each, and then spend up to 3 on exceed side for +1 power each.
Right. And
Uh,
Reggie,
and
this isn't like a Rekka effect on some attacks that I've seen on this show before. This is when you set the attack not after you've seen your opponent's card. So you are
no,
committing your resources
it,
up front for this.
you are committing them up front, but unlike a lot of effects like this, you can do it on defense.
Right. When you set your
A
attack,
lot of
not when you initiate your attack, or not when you initiate with an attack.
Yep. So if you've got an EX attack, your opponent's at range 3 and you have EX assault, go wild, spend your hand, kill them,
Right.
launch them into the sun. Uh, which, normally these sorts of effects don't allow for.
Right.
To facilitate his clear, silly amount of gauge spending, fight has one less special, and one more ultra.
Right.
So he has a 3 and 4 as opposed to a 2 and 5 deck.
Right.
His game plan, as I play him, revolves around a couple of things. Firstly, he has a very strong opening mix-up in the form of electrocharge and explosive shot.
Okay.
So explosive shot is the default. I put air quotes there and realized you cannot see that. So it's a 3 to 5, 3/5. Ignore armor. Hit. Add the top card of your discard to your gauge.
So
And that doesn't.
above curve
Yep.
and ignore armor though.
And generates an additional gauge because you're gonna.
Wow.
So turn 1 fight typically is strike with explosive shot, spending an ultra from your hand.
Okay.
So because that generates an additional force into your gauge as well as overspending other cards.
Oh,
So a
okay.
big thing with.
So I see. So sorry to interrupt. So I put this card
Yep.
down.
Yep.
My opponent responds. I've initiated. So I'm saying we're I'm putting down uh one card.
Yeah.
Do they see that it's
Yes.
is
So
this
you
face up?
spend it.
Okay, so
Yeah. So it's
it's two
spent.
force. Okay,
Yep.
they know it's
But
two
as
force.
opposed to if you'd spent 2 specials
Right,
to put them in discard, you'd only get one of them into your gauge.
right, and because this is worth two force, this is now in my discard pile.
Yep.
So when I flip, there's something to check in the discard pile. It gets around the Sagat
Yeah,
Tiger
the
Trap problem.
Hadoken thing.
Yeah, or the
Yep.
Hadoken thing. Okay, I got you. Then this goes to gauge, and conveniently, it's worth two force, so I can spend it as two force later. Got it.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Uh,
Please continue.
it's a Yep, it's a so this is a very strong opening. It's 5 speed. It loses to a cross, and you've invested a lot. Oh no, the opponent's retreated out, which is where Electro Charge comes in.
Right.
It's a 4 to 6, 5/1, and you get +3 guard for each force you spent this turn, which is a clause that doesn't often come up, but might. And then hit, add the top card of your discard to your gauge. So it's the counterpart to Explosive Shot.
Right. So
But if the opponent's retreat.
right. So same final effect, but it's much slower at the in exchange for catch and cross.
Yeah, it's a lot more conditional than explosive shot. Typically, it's a harder to land. Uh, doesn't ignore armor,
Right.
but on the other hand, it has a higher base power and it catches cross.
Right.
So from starting positions, that's your mix up. You turn 1, you can initiate with explosive shot or electro charge, and your opponent just has to choose.
Right.
And if they choose wrong, you've got 2 cards engage, and you've hit them for either 5 or 7 damage.
Right. And hopefully. Oh yeah. So it's not just that I've put an ultra engage for force expenditure later. He has the character ability
It's
that you just finished explaining. So
Yep,
this is effectively 5. This is effectively 7. Got it.
yep. It's very scary.
Yeah.
It's a very scary ability, and it only gets scarier when you exceed. So when you exceed, it spends 3 gauge, and then you get to put up to 2 continuous boosts from discard, hand, or gauge into play. Now, typically, I put 2 from gauge into play, 2 from discard into play, which are
Right.
ones from gauge. If there are boosts in gauge that you would like to play, I advise that you spend them as your exceed cost.
Right. Now they're in discard. Now you can put them in play as boosts again.
Yes, so
Got
you
it.
don't have to spend extra gauge, basically.
Right.
So something like sweep. It's not hard to land sweep at all. Then, you have light in play.
Right.
Or something like lightning gun. You've spent all your ultras, you spend them as force. So they end up in discard. Oh wait, they have boosts on them that you can recur when you exceed.
Right. Got it. Okay. So
Yeah. So
the exceed timing and the exceed structure. If you have more than the gauge required to exceed, choose your gauge carefully that goes to discard so that you can then recur the boosts that you want.
yeah, and because of how explosive shot and electro charge work, I would advise that you always spend your ultras last, so they are the top card of your discard. Just because there's a chance it'll be more efficient.
Right.
Um, so Fight's actually a pretty simple character as I play him. So you see these 7 cards here. You have 1 playable attack, 1 conditionally playable attack, and then 2 conditionally playable ultras with. So most of how I play Fight is I play him as Normal's Man using his specials as boosts and his force.
Okay.
Specials and ultras. Because it turns out the ability to add +2 power or +3 power onto normals is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And his
Okay.
boost kit is very effective at using resources. He has an additional force in his kit by having an extra ultra over, well, an additional 2 because he has 2.
Right.
But yeah, so his kit I'm gonna just go through because his ability is pretty simple. Just spend force for power.
Right. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later in the game or later in the conversation. But if we don't, just to mention it for later, um, I'm assuming that a big part of the complexity of playing Fight is knowing when to and when not to spend for that ability because you are um
Yeah,
it's expensive. It's
absolutely.
expensive. It's a costly ability to get that effect.
Though it is up to. You do not have
Yes.
to spend the full amount.
Yes.
Though if you don't spend the full amount, you're telegraphing. All your actions always telegraph something.
Right, because you're
So
either
just be
you're getting rid of things from your hand, or you're not, and that says something too.
yeah, or your
Yeah,
gauge.
true.
When I play
Yep.
Fight, I often spend a lot from gauge. But because he has quite a few ways to put things in gauge.
Right.
For
Yeah.
example, let's go through his ultras.
Yeah.
So Flamethrower is a 2 gauge ultra, 145 ignore guard. That doesn't sound very impressive. Then it has
No.
before plus 0 to 1 range for each force you spent this turn. So in Exceed mode, it's 1 to 4, 7, 5.
Yeah.
Ignore guard.
That's a lot more. So
That's that's
so 2 gauge ultra for that would be insane. 2 gauge and 3/4. Okay. Now it's sounding
yeah,
a little bit more properly costed.
yeah. It's definitely impressive. But I actually really like the boost on it.
Okay.
So the 1 Force Ultra Boost, Explore. Now advance or retreat 2. Put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge.
Right. So
So that
you're basically trading 3/4 for 2 gauge. It's actually not really even then. I mean, you're getting movement out of it too. So it's
yep,
very, very force efficient, actually.
yeah, you're paying basically 1 force for the chance to gain 2 gauge,
Right.
which is actually really good
Yeah.
because
And
he
and if you hit, you're actually getting a third gauge too. That's not coming from this
yep,
card, but by the end of this interaction, you are likely to have 3 gauge.
yes, you can play this and then be in a position to exceed
Yeah.
on turn
That
1.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's actually
fight
wild. So
fight you
so
will spend a lot of the game exceeded.
gotcha. Okay. So advance or retreat 2. Now I'm here. I play cross. I've just gotten myself 3 gauge. Um, and I have things in the discard if I want to play there's something in the discard if I want to play the explosive shot. And now that I'm at this range again, it goes back to gauge again.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. It's nasty. And even better, when you exceed and you put boosts into play, you do not pay their costs.
Right.
So you play Blob, now advance 2, and it costs you nothing.
Right. And it is a continuous boost. Right. Okay. Because
Yep.
the now
The
effect
hit
doesn't mean it's not
effect.
continuous. Sure.
Yeah,
Um,
now effect absolutely mean it is continuous. If a boost has a now effect, it is a continuous
right.
boost.
Good point. Otherwise, it would just say the text itself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
question about exceed timing because if fight's
Yes.
exceed mode is important enough to his game plan that you're kind of pushing for it early, um, it might not necessarily be a situation when you have exactly 3 gauge, it's time to exceed. Actually, you were talking about that just a second ago when you were talking about what to spend from gauge, which kind of implies that you might have an overage when you do exceed.
Yeah. So
If
I like to
it,
exceed when I've got two good boosts I can pull,
that was what I
either
was
in
going
my
to ask.
discard
Right,
or through my gauge, or as if I've got two good boosts I can spend, then whenever.
right. That was why I was
Then it
asking
doesn't matter.
that kicker on the exceed effect for the 2 continuous boosts. I mean, that could be Way of the Warrior. That can be that's a
Yeah.
huge swing
Uh,
in power for a
yep.
kicker.
You could absolutely grab a grasp and a light,
Right.
which if you do, your opponent should run. They should
Yes.
be very afraid.
Yes, they should get away. All right, yeah, that I just wanted to circle back to that idea really quickly. Now that I processed it a little bit more, that just because the exceed is important doesn't mean that you should do it instantaneously upon getting the 3 gauge. It's when you can get the most value out of the exceed effect
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah. And you have quite a few good boosts,
Yeah,
so the odds of you getting three is not hard at all.
absolutely. Yeah,
That
I'm looking at these,
yeah.
and all but one in the kit are of I don't know the quality yet. I'm sure you'll explain them. But almost all of them are continuous.
Yeah, literally all bar one are continuous. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's flamethrower. It's
gotcha.
a useful ultra attack. You know, hits at long range, at decent speed, it ignores guard, and it hits pretty hard because everything in Fight's kit hits pretty hard.
Right.
And then Explorb is a very useful boost for positioning, for gauge generation. It's just does everything. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't give you any stats, but that's okay. Um so then the next ultra in his kit is Railgun. It's a 4 gauge, 3 to 8, 7 power, 5 speed. Hit the opponent has -1 armor for each force you spent this turn. So I hate this card. I don't know if I think I've played it exactly once ever. It's super expensive and it's not like it doesn't ignore armor. So if your opponent plays block, right? You
Right.
can't have negative armor. So they'd just be spending as if it was from zero. So uh yeah, just very unimpressed with this attack for its cost.
Okay. Can you uh, when you play this, the this is true of flamethrower as well. I should ask that as well. When you are spending gauge to validate an ultra, it doesn't count as force spent that turn. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it does not count as full.
So
Yeah,
here's 4 gauge and then the 3 force that you can spend with your character ability, for example, to give the opponent -3 armor.
yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's not a bad card. Like it is a 4 gauge ultra. I just find that at lower gauges he has better things to spend, and he can also spend gauges force to turn sweep into a 9 power sweep, for example.
Right, which is again that is an ultra shape on its own is a 9 power sweep probably.
Yeah, so it's just competing with things that it can't beat.
Right.
And then Moth Orb is 1 force ultra boost. Hit, put the top card of your deck into gauge for each force you spent this turn. It's an alright boost. Um, I think I consider it markedly worse than Explorb for a couple of reasons. Explorb has the movement on it.
Right.
Uh, Explorb is non-conditional on what it puts onto into your gauge. Like it's always going to put two in. So in Exceed mode, you can technically put more with Moth Orb, but at that point, you don't need it as much.
Right. Because what you're getting the gauge for is exceeding and then later on force costs.
Yeah,
It's not
force costs
necessary
and ultras.
it's not necessarily okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not as desperately needed. So it's not bad. It is another way for you to generate additional resources, but it I find it is just lax in comparison to Explore.
Right.
Like if I had this and one other boost in discard, I probably would not be considering exceeding to grab this.
Got it. Okay. So what that means then though is that this is if it's not a particularly useful boost on a attack that you've probably never played, this might just be a force,
2 force.
which he really needs.
Yeah. 2
Okay.
force on fight is +2 power.
Yes.
That's phenomenal.
And frequently other things as well, as we're learning.
Yes.
It's also range sometimes. It's also like he gets a lot out of this expenditure. So having a dedicated card for it, that sounds fine to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Hell, if you want to use it to move, that's fine too. Like,
Sure.
you still have the regular uses for force as well, which are always good, changing cards,
Right.
movement.
Right.
But
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so don't be afraid to spend railgun. If you can land railgun, more power to you. It's 7 power. Like, I'm never knocking that. It's 7 or 9 or 10
Or
power.
10. Yeah. That's a lot. And it's semi unblockable. It's harder to block. It's more expensive to block.
Yeah, and it's 5 speed and it hits at range 8, so they can't cross out. Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's a good card.
But it's very pricey.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Like, you could land that and lose the game.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
there's not a lot of 4 gauge alts you could land in their proper condition and lose the game, but I think railgun is one of them.
Right. Before we continue on, Reggie, a question that I just thought of about the explosive shot electric charge mix up, and I know we'll get back to them. Just
Yes.
a question about their hit effects. Um, at this point
Yep.
in Exceed, are discard piles still required by the rules to be ordered?
So I'm not actually certain if it's how it's worded in the rulebook, but the characters in seasons 3 through 6 were designed with that being the case.
Yes.
So that is how they're played. If that is not the case and they're not ordered, fight becomes a lot stronger.
Right. Is actually massively buffed by that rules errata. Okay.
Yeah, because in saying that, it's not massively, because explosive shot you're probably spending anyway, so you have control over that putting that ultra there.
Right.
But on those stray explosive shots, like you wild swing when the opponent's played a spike or whatever,
Right. And
get
you haven't spent force on your wild swing ahead of time.
yeah,
Right.
then okay. But as I understand it, and as I plays a character, they are played around not having ordered discards.
Understood. Got it. Okay. Please continue. Thank you
Yep.
for that clarification.
No, all good. And now we're on to the other 2 gauge ultra in fights kit, lightning gun.
Yes.
So it's 1 to 3, 2, 6. 2 gauge ultra. Its text is hit +1 power for each force you spend this turn. So it doubles the value of each force you spend.
Right. So this isn't a situation where, like, so every force you're spending is worth +2. You don't need to spend 6 force to get this. It's not on top of. It's
Nope.
right.
No. So if you spend 3 force, you get +6 power.
Right. So now it's 8.
Yes.
It's 1 3
On
8 6, which is a lot.
Yes. On front side, it can only hit 6, but it's a 1 to 3, 6, 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is still a lot. That's still fine.
Yeah, still above curve. It's above curve, hitting 6 power.
Right.
Like, there's
It's
nothing to sneeze at.
it has a very similar stat line to like Moonsong,
Yeah.
Jin's Ultra, and it's quite a bit cheaper than that.
1 gauge cheaper,
Yeah.
but this would require you spending force.
Right, of
But
course.
you
Yeah. So
have additional force in the kit and a lot of ways to generate it.
right.
Generate resources. So, you know, it's not at all it's a great way to end games,
Mhm.
because the opponent is scared of playing armor against fight, because explosive shot exists.
Right, of course.
Yep. And even then, like, you hit hard through armor. You know, if this is hitting for 8, the opponent can be at 6 life, and this can kill them
Sure. Yeah,
through,
I mean,
like,
presumably they've been
focus.
spending force as well. Yeah, I mean their blocks might not be up to the task of dealing with all of the things that fight can pressure them
Yeah.
with.
Now, in saying that, for all of these ultras, there is the thing: the opponent denies the value of them. You're in trouble. They are expensive in a character that has expenses. Like you taking that risk can be rough.
Okay,
Which
so
is like
if they do block, then I'm not happy.
you're not happy, but block isn't so bad. The
Okay,
problem is when they cross
gotcha,
or avoid it somehow.
gotcha.
Because at least if they block, they're having to spend resources and you're getting the card to gauge, which you can then spend as force.
Right.
If they make it miss, suddenly you're down the force you spent and the gauge you spent and the force of the card.
Okay.
So just be wary, but Lightning Gun does have the advantage. It's 6 speed. If the opponent thinks you're playing Flamethrower and they cross out and they get Lightning Gunned, they might just concede. They might leave.
Yeah. You've lost a friend that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The boost on it.
This costs
Yep.
2 gauge, up to 3 force, and 1 friend. Gotcha.
At least one
At
friend,
least
yeah.
1 friend. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so the boost on Lightning Gun doesn't actually look all that impressive. This is a
Yeah.
boost you'll see on some specials. +1 speed, now advance or retreat 1. And in some cases, it's not that impressive. It's, +1 speed, now advance or retreat 1. It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
But because Fight has the ability to just put power out at will, anything that makes his ability to make attacks more consistent,
Right.
so speed and defenses, is super, super valuable.
Right.
Because, +1 speed now means that, your assaults now can't be crossed out of.
Right. Now they're above
And now,
curve, and if I'm putting a bunch of power on them, in
yep,
Exceed
7
mode,
power assault.
that beats sweep.
Yeah,
Seems good.
yep.
Okay.
Beats cross, beats sweep. Trades well with focus because you're
Okay.
gaining advantage.
So
Yeah.
so the interactions here kind of sound like what D has described to me about like Akuma, where I have tons of power boosts. My speed boosts are crucial to confirming those power boosts, or my on curve or
Yep.
above curve options in his case sometimes are crucial. It's just that for
Yep.
fight, the power boosts are not coming uh from a crit effect
Crits or
or from
boosts.
boosts. They're coming from just his force expenditure.
Yeah.
Got it.
Fight does have two things I consider the major difference between Fight and Akuma. Conceptually, I consider to be that Fight is doesn't have it's not mutual, right? Akuma's is theoretically mutual, and you have to
Right.
play around that.
Right. Fight
Whereas
is just
Fight doesn't have that,
right.
but he is burdened by the resource. Akuma's just cost him a crit,
Right. Yeah.
whereas Fight's costs a
He's fine
lot
with
more
that.
resource.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the big difference. But conceptually, same thing. They're heavy hitters that can generate the power easily. They just need to find a way to do it. Find
Gotcha.
a way to confirm those
Confirm it.
hits.
Gotcha.
Yep. All right, and then next on, yeah. So like Electro Charge, Arachnomorph, kind of underwhelming, but +1 speed, now advance or retreat 1.
Right. So
Fantastic.
playable ultra with a great boost on it. Probably force,
Full
to be honest.
2 force.
Uh
Yep.
Playable ultra with
Playable
with
ultra.
a good boost on it.
Yeah. It would not be a good boost. It would be an okay boost in most other kits. I think Fight can really make use of it, and
Right.
the fact that it's because he's got the extra ultra, he can afford to have a slightly worse boost on an ultra,
Right.
especially because he can get it for free.
Yes. And often will. Is this boost good enough to be
I would
exceeding with?
consider it. I would consider it to be so, especially because if you land assault as your last hit to exceed or before you exceed or whatever.
Right.
So you land at range 1, and then you go explore, and then Arachnomorph.
Right.
So then landing this is more consistent because you've got the extra speed on, so the boost, it's more consistent to land explore to
Right.
get the bonus out of it because you've got the bonus speed. And also, it could be that you explore and then you don't want to be at 3, or so you move in 1.
Right. It's a little bit of micro spacing on top of the sort of because this is a big chunk of movement. This is 2 exactly, not up to 2. So you might
Yeah,
need some fine tuning on your position with lightning gun or with arachno
exactly.
rather. Gotcha. Arachnomorph.
Yeah, yeah. So then and also I think any bonus speed I think is worth taking just because of your ability to convert that to power.
Right.
So then we've got Electrocharge. I think this attack is bad, but I think it needs to exist.
Gotcha.
You need to be able to threaten, the 4 to 6 hit, so the opponent can't just freely cross out. They can't
Right.
just go, nah, not engaging.
Right. But outside of that one use case, which is an important use case because of how important explosive shot is, but
Yeah,
outside of that one use case, it's not an impressive card.
yeah. It catches cross sometimes because if you spend, it gets the guard on it.
Right.
If your opponent only has fast fireballs and they're at a fireball distance, you know.
Right.
But
And
because it's
and
a 4 to 6, if you initiate at 6, they can still dive under it.
right. And that's kind of why you say that the +3 guard for each force you spent this turn isn't necessarily um you said that we can kind of ignore that text, or that text doesn't come up very often. Is that because the primary way to beat this card is by getting out of its kind of narrow range
Yeah,
band, not by stunning it out?
yeah. Like it's not really a card that ends up trading all that often. It
Right.
it has the capability to. It can have up to 9 guard,
Yeah.
but and a lot of the things that you're going to be trading with aren't going to hit that hard anyway.
Definitely not. Yeah, with in the fireball meta, the what we're sort of looking at is generally like 5 is enough.
Yeah,
So not
5 is
9 is kind of excessive.
yeah, yeah. If it's a hard hitting fireball, it might
Right.
hit for 6,
For
but a lot
6.
of the
Right.
time, yeah, yeah, it's just not that big of a deal. On the other hand, it's another source of plus speed in the kit.
Yes.
So suddenly you have +1 speed. Suddenly your grasp on defense, and it's after retreat 1, 8 speed grasp that hits for 6 and then retreats 1. So it beats sweep
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
because you can push out and move out yourself.
Yep.
So it,
Yeah, okay. So so kind of analogous to this on the surface, but that after rather than the now, this is positioning, this is safety.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's fine. Like I'm. This is a card I prefer to boost than rather than pay as force.
Gotcha.
Like that's a scenario. I though it goes, I'm most likely to pay to play as a boost, and then I'm gonna spend it as force, and least likely I'm to play it as an attack.
Right. So when you're triaging it, that's actually something. Once we finish the kit breakdown, I would love to hear like the rankings of,
Yep,
this is always an attack, then it's a boost, then it's force, that kind of thing.
yeah, I can do that.
That'd be great.
Um, yeah, because fight's pretty simple, so we should have plenty of time to do so.
Definitely.
So we got power jump, 1 to 2, 2, 3, 1, 3. Hit retreat 2 after push 1. This is a very strange card.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm. It's it.
yeah,
I'm trying to figure out how to read it. I mean, okay, so it's a weird. It's an odd, kind of safe, sometimes mid speed with some slow properties, I guess.
yeah.
Huh.
It
Yeah.
so and because it's the retreat is on hit and the push is on after, it reads weird as well.
Yeah.
But it is functionally just a positioning based mid speed.
Right.
If you just sort of squint your eyes a bit, don't pay too much attention to it. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
So several of Fight's cards have kind of low power values because of his ability.
Right.
But yeah, so this is a card that, retreats 2 and then pushes 1. So it beats, both slow normals, uh, beats, uh, beats Spike, loses to the fasts. It's a typical mid speed.
Right.
I don't think it's a very good card.
Right.
Uh,
And loses to the fast, but also, I mean, has enough armor and guard to at least get through them.
yeah,
So
and so you'd still get your after push 1
right.
a lot of the time, as much as that matters.
Right. Okay.
But I think the thing about this card that makes it not great is you already have a card that serves the purpose of a mid speed, but is fast in Explosive Shot,
Right.
or in either of your playable ultras.
Right. So you're not lacking for answers to slow options.
Slows.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Power jump might not be that useful then.
yeah. Fight is a character that I consider quite speed sensitive. If
Yep.
you outspeed him, he's in trouble.
Yep.
He lacks a lot of defenses on things. He doesn't have slows. He's basically mid speeds the character.
Gotcha.
You want to make your things faster so they hit more consistently.
Right.
In
That,
exchange for power jump being uh, just a strange card, dash is a 0 force boost on it. Advance or retreat 2. If you did not move past the opponent, add this card to your gauge. This card's phenomenal.
yeah.
Uh, it's resource efficient movement that also generates you gauge, so it's doubly resource efficient.
Yeah. It's I mean, it might even be resource positive uh
Yeah,
in some ways,
and
honestly. Yeah.
it often is. Yeah, like say starting positions. Ryu turn one steps in because he thinks he can beat explosive shot that way,
Right.
and I go dash and generate a gauge, or I go dash and generate a gauge.
Right.
It's just very free, and at worst, like you're at range one and you don't want to be at range one, you go and don't generate a gauge, but you just
But you
move two.
but you set the range that you want to set, sure. You uncorner
Yeah,
yourself with that boost. You reverse positions when you're being threatened in the corner. Yeah, okay, that definitely works.
yeah,
I'm noticing, so not a continuous boost. It's the one that you can't play from discard
yeah,
once you exceed.
correct.
I'm also noticing, just as a general theme of the kit, like I've got an after retreat one boost. I've got retreat two on hit. I've got advance to retreat one. I've got advance to retreat two. We got advance to retreat two. I've got a lot, actually, a huge amount of movement boosts for this kind of character,
Correct.
and
Yes.
a lot of rangy options, but many of them are kind of in narrow bands. It so
Yes.
it does this character have a specific range that he really likes to stand at, or is this a character that has lots of options that hit at different ranges and a lot of ability to switch between them as he needs to?
The range you want to be at is the range that lets you hit explosive shot. I think it's the most important card in the kit.
Okay.
Uh, and then after that, you just be at the range for the cards in your hand.
Okay.
Uh, Typically it's 3 or less. So I like 3 because explosive shot, and then making the range 3 mix up more punishing.
Right.
Because of your ability and your ability to attack bonus speed on. And also, if you're at range 3, explore and dash let you easily, range 1 or make distance if you need it.
If you need to share it, it's kind of the sweet spot where if you need to go to extreme or extreme close up, uh,
Yeah,
you can do it in one card instead of having to play 2 turns worth or something.
yeah. So fight is in theory sort of like a ranger zoner type character.
Right.
In practice, he is a ranger until he wants to get up close,
Okay. And if you're
and
playing him as
then
normals,
he does
man,
so.
well, normals are
1 to 3.
notably, yeah,
Yeah,
notably, other than dive, not particularly great at range 5, 6, 7, 8. So okay, that makes sense.
yeah. Like you'll often end up at range, and particularly the slows become super punishing with his ability. So
Sure.
you'll often be at range 1 threatening something with +3 power, and
Right.
your opponent is making the mix up between making the read between grasp or sweep, or
Or
our next card,
9 power sweep.
retreating bolts.
Okay.
Retreating bolts is range 3,
So
2 power, 4 speed.
but it's a range 1 card
Yeah,
because
absolutely
the
is.
before, what a weird shape.
Yep. It's even better. And it's +1 speed for each force you spent this turn.
Right.
So on front side, it only hits 6 speed, but and then it's full power, but it's a fast that beats focus.
Yeah.
It's honestly more of a mid speed. But the really fun one is if you're already at range 3.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So
If
say
you have
you
nowhere to
back.
go.
Yep. So then you can have a speed 6 or speed 7 card at range 3.
Right. Okay. So again, makes that range 3 mix up kind of more threatening. So it's another reason to maybe in certain circumstances stand at 3.
Yeah. And it's 5 power. And also just if you're normally at like range 2 or 3 and the opponent's initiating into you, you can just use it as like a crosswood,
Right.
spend force. It's more expensive, but the ability to not engage in a mix up is always plenty useful.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, just I mean, you don't have to hit to win combat in this game necessarily. Making your opponent miss at a
Yeah,
crucial time is often more than enough, especially if you have options that punish them at that range.
yeah. Which is a good way to beat fight. Because he expends so many resources on things,
Mm-hmm.
he can run out of steam if you make him miss quite easily.
Right.
Though he can also start his engine back up using stuff like explore or dash or whatever.
Right.
But yeah. And then we've got Deadlock Boots, which is a 1 force boost, a 1 force continuous boost, stun immunity, now advance or retreat 1.
Okay.
This is a boost I actually don't play all that often. I probably should play it more because it's stun immunity. But as I play fight, I don't like to trade as much.
Okay.
Because ideally you just hit for big numbers and stun.
And you break whatever they're
Yeah,
trying to armor with or guard with.
yeah, whatever they're playing with,
Right.
whatever they're playing. So that stun immunity doesn't matter too much. But in saying that, if you're at like range 1, you exceed at range 3, you play explore to get into or you're at range 4 because you landed explosive shot or whatever.
Sure.
You explore in, and then you boots in, and suddenly you have the option of stun immune assault with +3 power. That's
And
going to gain you advantage
and
and put
gauge. Yeah.
yes. So my thing with I think speed is better with more different things, but stun immunity on specific cards is really impressive.
Right.
It's just that fight doesn't have a ton of those specific cards.
Right.
The ones I consider best for it are flamethrower, because it's a 1 to 4 attack in
Mhm.
exceed mode, and also assault, because
Okay.
it's
It-
1 to 3.
And a ton of upside on that, as you just mentioned. I'm noticing that the exceed kicker uh, put into play without paying their costs. That is reminder text, but also that matters specifically for this, and this. And two of those
Yes,
boosts, as we sort of established, are really good.
absolutely worth.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely worth playing off it. So yeah, and they're worth playing. Most like Explore is worth playing otherwise, but
Right.
if you can get it for free, get it for free.
Yeah. And so maybe not to the point that I should be rushing down. When I exceed, I'm digging through my discard deck for these boosts in particular because they're the expensive ones, and that saves me a force. I should do the ones that give me the advantage that I need on the turn that I'm playing them. But that is a consideration still, that these are
Yeah.
expensive and they won't be when I play them from my exceed kicker.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Got it.
remember, it's not just specials or ultras. It's just continuous
Yeah. So
boosts.
light,
So
fierce, any of those
it's
are, and
light, fierce, defend.
yeah.
I think that's it.
Of the normals, yeah, that those are the continuous boosts. But
Yeah.
I mean, like you were just getting done talking about how important bonus speed is. Uh,
Bonus
eight.
speed, bonus power. Like if you're at you exceed at range 3. Uh, l- Add Way of the Warrior, light and fierce,
Yep.
+2 power, +2 speed, and the ability to add 3 more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Plus 5 power plus 2 speed. Yeah, that's worth the amount of force that you're spending. If it was a
With
boost,
explosive shot.
yes, as an above curve option that ignores armor. Okay, I'm starting to see the game plan here.
Yep. The game plan in general revolves around our lost card,
Okay.
explosive shot,
Yep.
which might be the best special ever printed.
Wow.
I think even excluding his best special ever printed on a that's not a force special and not on a banned character. I should
Gotcha.
add those caveats.
Gotcha. Okay.
But uh it's above curve, but still hits at it's above curve fireball that hits at a range that combat commonly occurs at 3,
Yep.
that ignores armor, it returns resources. In his case, it can generate like an extra one because if you spend the ultra
The ultra.
last,
Yep.
if, yep. And when you're in exceed mode, it can be 6 power, so it can stun focus because it ignores armor.
Right.
If the opponent is at 6 life, uh, you can just end the game.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
have no crosses. You just play explosive shot and kill them.
Yeah, that's probably just checkmate.
And the boost on it is hit range 3 plus 3 power. So that's a hit effect. Do you know about trigger ordering, Gearface?
A little bit. So we were discussing it earlier. Reggie and I were talking about Mole Knight, and you were telling me about being able to stack your before triggers. But yeah,
Well,
tell me about that for the hit effect for Shoot Orb.
okay, so it's because it's a hit effect. You can do that in any order with other hit effects.
Right.
So, uh, power jump, hit retreat 2,
Now I'm at range 3.
hit plus 3 power,
Now it's 5
or
power.
at plus whatever you spent, or
Right.
gr- grasp,
Oh, okay. So 7 God. So 7 speed, uh range 1
6
option
power.
that plus what I'm spending on it. Wow,
Yep.
that's
So it can be
insane.
9 power grasp,
Yeah.
or or if you're really evil, this isn't a trigger ordering thing. Just explosive shot.
Yeah,
Just
just
the other copy.
do it with both. Oh God, that's horrible. Um,
Yep.
so so
I
I
don't
was,
actually think it's a very good boost, to
but
be clear.
it's on the best special. Just play the special, but that seems really fun.
Yes.
I want to play
Uh
a 9 power grasp. That sounds like something I need on my Exceed bingo card. That sounds wonderful.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're at range 1 and your opponent sees that in play and they
Right,
know about that, they're absolutely going to think you're playing grasp.
right.
So,
Yeah,
power
you play
jump.
power jump instead or something like that. Of course.
Yeah, so yeah, because their focus that stops you throwing them out to get the bonus power doesn't stop you going out.
Right, of
But yeah,
course.
so Fight I think is fundamentally a very simple character.
Okay.
So in terms of strategy, your strategy is hit explosive shot, generate an additional gauge hit explosive shot spending an ultra. Generate an additional gauge somehow. I don't really care how you do it. And then you exceed, and then you just play normals mix ups brutally and forever.
Yep.
Because if you play the normals mix ups, but you win more heavily when you win, you will win the game.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
that's just how it works. But
If you're perfectly 50-50 on your mix-ups, but you're doing twice as much damage as the opponent, uh
exactly.
very winning proposition for you. Okay.
But the downsides with fight and where the skill comes in is in managing your resources and you spending at the right times.
Right.
So obviously,
I was about to ask that this whole time we've been talking about these at largely at their max power as use cases, and I'm curious to know how common that actually
so
is.
So the 4 cards I actually will play as attacks in this kit. So
Mhm.
flamethrower, lightning gun, retreating bolt, and explosive shot.
Okay.
I always spend full. I'm actually a big believer of playing when I'm playing fight, spend full all the time.
Okay.
If you can spend full, you should be doing it. Um, if you think you should be spending it all,
Okay. And and
because it
and and
telegraphs
when you're
less.
not, oh, that's true. It telegraphs less. When you're not spending, it's because you're not confident that it's going to hit. So if you're striking into
Yeah,
your opponent's setup, or if you're in a situation where you're like wild swinging on defense because you know the strike is lost, just don't spend force.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. If you don't think you're going to win, but if you're initiating a strike, you should be thinking you're going to win.
Right.
That's a whether it that's just a mindset thing.
Right.
Like if you're obviously if you're initiating to defuse a setup, that's a different matter. That's just tech. That's
Right.
just tech with
Yeah.
extra
That. Yeah.
steps.
And you probably take a punch from it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You just accept that. You just go, all right, and don't spend any force. But if you're at range 3, just because you're playing spike or dive doesn't mean you don't spend.
Okay.
In fact, because if you don't spend there, it telegraphs to your opponent
That you're not
that
confident. Right.
you are probably playing a mid speed. Because if you're playing the on curve option, you'd be spending because it's
Right.
most likely to hit,
Right.
and then you don't. The only thing I would say about spending is that when you do it and you look at your hand, if there's an option in your hand that is valid for the mix up and or is a good tool otherwise, those are not cards you spend.
Right. Okay. So don't spend your explosive shot even if you are spending in full. Like if it's
Yeah,
useful for if you're going to play it later, don't get rid of it.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Because Fight doesn't have any ways to recur cards in a way that he can play them.
Right. He can reboost them or put them to gauge from discard, but not as attacks again.
Yeah, you can't
Right.
get them back to hand until you reshuffle,
Right.
which you probably will because
Because
this card,
you're burning through cards.
yeah, and you will probably have downtime. You will not be striking every turn as Fight.
Right.
Uh, you are going to spend cards and you will need to change cards and prepare a decent amount.
Right.
Now, your ultras engage. If you don't intend to spend them as gauge, they are quite good to spend to change cards because because they will go at least even because you will spend 2 force and get at least 2 force.
Right.
But because you have additional ultras in your deck, the odds of you drawing an ultra, which means it's positive in force,
Right.
is high.
Is much higher. That makes sense. Okay. And also
So,
uh like once you've exceeded the the things that you are other than force, the things that you're hoping to spend as resources are the ultras that you're talking about taking out of your gauge. So it is unlikely
yeah,
that you are saving for flamethrower when you've already got flamethrower in your gauge. So just spend it as force to change cards or to pump your attacks.
yeah,
Right. And
yep.
and
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 I you
your
often
movement is kind of taken care of by your many movement
your
boosts.
boosts.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Spend to move if you have to, but you have the boost kit to not have to.
Right. Okay.
Uh, and you will often spend from gauge. I find it's more reliable to spend from gauge because your 2 ultras you want to play are only 2 gauge. It's not hard to generate 2 gauge.
Right. Especially with
Uh,
fight, who's getting resources like crazy.
yeah, yeah. So I find spending from gauge is better. Just keeps your hand size large, so you have more threats available, and
Right.
also it telegraphs less because they are already not part of the mix up
Right.
because they're in the gauge, not in your hand.
Right.
And it
That's very
means
true. Yeah.
when you have to defend, you're not spending things that you could use to defend.
To defend, sure. How often are you spending on defense?
Um, if you have an above curve option,
Right.
so if you have or an EX attack,
Yep.
lightning gun, flamethrower,
Yep.
uh, retreating bolts if you're in the corner,
Right. So
or
basically,
or just
all the things that you said you'd play as attacks. In
yeah.
the circumstances you'd play them, you play on defense too.
I would play retreating bolts at 1, and I probably wouldn't spend. If you're playing retreating bolts, you're spending.
Right.
But I would just be careful about using that on defense.
Right.
Um, but also on defense, if you're playing something pretty consistent, like if you're at range 1 and the opponent initiates, you play focus, you're probably hitting them back.
Sure.
You can feel pretty safe about spending some force there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If fight spends and whiffs, right?
Yes.
If Cammy plays dive kick into me at range 1, into range 1 or something, and I just whiff the attack,
Yes.
is that absolutely backbreaking for fight? I've spent all of my force. I'm not getting a gauge back. Like, is that
So
like worst case scenario?
the the bad news is that is rough.
Yeah.
You have the tools to rebuild in all your resource stuff, but it can be rough. And your opponent will be looking to exploit those turns, and it'll probably happen at least once a game to you.
Sure.
Something like that, where you spend and you get done. You get avoided, or you get stunned,
Yep.
or
they have an
so
EX attack that
that'll
you didn't expect. Something will happen that will diffuse your strike, and you will
yeah,
have spent too many resources. Definitely.
that'll happen, and a good opponent will try to exploit that.
Right.
Uh, the best you can do is play safe, play. I was going to say compact, but like efficient,
Yeah.
standard. You know, good principles. Don't mess about. You're not playing your cheeky dives or whatever. Just
Right.
play good, straightforward exceed.
Right.
Just and then work to build back up.
Which kind of fits in with the normals man ethos, right? Like you are playing a very very standard game. Just when you hit, you do a lot more.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're gonna wanna and you're gonna look at what you've got in discard. At some points you might want to take the reshuffle action, because if you've got no more copies of Explore and no more copies of Explosive Shot, and like you've got one ultra left, maybe it's worth taking that turn to reshuffle.
Right.
It's very low tempo, but you might need it to stay in the game.
Definitely.
Um, I think that making being aware of your opponent's kit super important, because you have the ability to punish so heavily. It You should be aware of what you can punish and when. So if
Right.
your opponent goes down on both copies of Grasp, you can go, oh, okay, I can go really hard here, sort of thing.
Right.
Or they're out both copies of Sweep. You go, oh, my retreating bolts in Exceed mode just is safe at range 1.
Right. Yeah.
That's just,
You don't care about the thing that beats it anymore because it's gone.
yeah, just 5 free damage.
Right.
And 5 free damage is a lot of free damage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a game where your deltas tend to be 3 or 4, right? Because you're mostly trading,
Yep,
and if you're not trading, you're winning cleanly for not very much. 5 is a lot.
yep.
Uh, a lot of the things that fight hits for is a lot of delta, honestly, or a lot of impact.
Yeah. So take your moments when you can exploit a gap in your opponent's defense. You can hit them very hard. So be aware of what their holes in the defense are.
Right.
You know, they've spent both their assaults, or they're a player who doesn't play assault on defense.
On defense, spike them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Spike them, hit them for 8.
Yep.
They're a player that doesn't cross at range 1, and they've got no range 1 spikes. Sweep for 9.
Yeah.
Like, when you know what your opponent's going to do, you can always punish like you do in every game of Exceed, but you can just do it more.
Much harder.
And you have plenty of speed boosts. Well, I say plenty. You have 2 speed boosts in your kit and light on Sweep.
Yep.
You can turn those speed boosts into power as well or better than any other character in the game.
Yeah. And also, like, I mean, EX attacks frequently on characters like this, when they are so speed sensitive, pushing that tiny bit farther to confirm a hit is frequently really really powerful.
Oh yeah, like the opponent initiates assault, you spend 3 and play EX assault back. You've just hit them for 8.
Yeah.
You just you've just done 8. Uh, that's
Yeah,
like
that's
almost a
back.
third of the opponent's
Yeah,
life.
that's backbreaking. If you are fight generates a lot of resources, but he doesn't really generate that much in the way
And
of card draw for his hand, right? So our EX
yes,
attacks, it's not like we just got done talking about Mole
you're
Knight,
not gar-
where it's
yeah,
not
you're not
Viper or
guaranteed.
yeah, you're not going to get them all the time, but play them when you have them.
Yeah, so
Even for things like above curve options, like I don't feel like you really need EX
I
explosive shot.
yeah, and you really want to land explosive shot twice.
Definitely,
Unless
yeah.
the opponent explicitly has a very good, like the opponent's Ryu,
Mhm. Right, and
then you might want to play.
can crit Hado his way through explosive shot.
Then you might want to play EX explosive shot.
Right,
Though you do lose some of the resource benefit of that
right,
because you spend the force first, and then when you reveal, the other copy would go to discard.
right,
So you wouldn't get the extra from the ultra. But there's a fun one there too. Your opponent's Ryu, they know you play an EX at range 3. They go, that's probably EX explosive shot. Or, you know, they you know, they play around it. They have to play around your explosive shot as well. So, like, you just play at range 3, you initiate a strike. Your opponent goes, I think that's explosive shot, and they crit Hado, and then you hit them for sweep with sweep.
sure, yeah.
Because it spending yeah. It's
Having the obvious thing that will definitely work here and be great here actually just makes your mix up stronger in a lot of cases.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It's central. It's a centralizing card.
Right,
The the game is built around playing against it.
right. So I'm assuming that my opponents will parry it because they can't block it.
Yeah.
Right,
If they might parry it, they'll try to cross out of it. Um, turn 1 parry explosive shot is like a play I've had done to me a few times.
Mhm.
Um, it sucks. Not gonna deny it. If they do parry the explosive shot, there's nothing much you can do about it.
Right,
But uh, they've wasted their turn parrying explosive shot. You just kill them with normals.
right,
Like explosive shot's good, but fundamentally, your kit is well suited to just making your resource game and your normals good.
right. And explosive shot's a part of that, but it's not the only part. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
and it stands on its own. Like it's an ignore armor above curve and will be 6 power.
right,
That's an impressive card, but the average of the kit is bumped up high.
right, definitely. Um, Question about some of the minutia about recurring these resources as you need them. Like, okay, I'm in a situation where I've exceeded and
Yep.
now they're in as continuous boosts or something like that. Or I've put an ultra into my gauge with explosive shot or something like that. Um, should I be trying to get the really important options out of my gauge before I reshuffle? uh,
Yes.
getting them back into discard somehow from wherever they are in the board, so that I
Yeah.
can get them back.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. Uh, Less so if they are boosts in play. You don't want to just be initiating a strike just to get it into discard.
right,
But if they're in your gauge, taking the change cards action, moving, things you want to do anyway before you reshuffle,
right.
that absolutely get them there.
I gotcha. Okay,
And if they're ultras, like I said earlier, the odds of you drawing into something of greater value, like you will always draw into at least the same value, and because you have the additional ultra, you have a better chance than normal to draw into additional value.
right. I gotcha.
Um, yep.
Do you want to do that triage thing? Do you want to tell me about
Oh, yep.
attack then boost then force, that kind of thing?
Yep. So let's start with the ultras.
Sure.
Boost. So I'll put them in the position that their main one is.
Right.
So this is mostly a boost.
Yep.
and then it's an attack, and then it's force.
Gotcha.
Upside down will be
Force.
force.
That works.
Yeah, that one's force.
Yep.
Like almost always. I very, very rarely is it not.
Yep.
This one's mostly boost as well. Just from the matter of you're spending resources a lot, so it's not impossible to have 2 gauge. It'll come up, but you're more likely to spend it as force.
Right.
Spend it as a boost.
As a boost, sure.
It's boost than force than attack.
Okay.
Actually, that's probably the same.
I think you said attack for this one before it was force. Which actually maybe tracks. But those two, it sounds like for the ultras between force and attack, it's fairly close. But boost first.
Yeah,
okay.
And you're more likely to and I probably wouldn't play either of them as an attack before you exceed, because they're not as good when you can only spend 3.
Only spend spend less. Yeah.
Only spend 2. Yeah.
Right.
Like flamethrower is not as bad because it can be on curve, spending 2.
Right.
Because it's 1 to 3 then, as opposed to 1 to 4. But lightning gun in particular, the difference between 6 and 8 is
definitely. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So you definitely want to use lightning gun after you exceed.
Gotcha.
Electrocharge is boost, and then force, and then attack, barring very specific matchups.
Or that one part of the range 1 mix up where the turn 1 mix up where you're trying to catch people getting out of explosive shot or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Like turn 1 mix up, or they're a character that's very committed to their ranged fireball, and it's a fast fireball.
Right.
Or something like that. You're going to notice a trend in this kit. This is boost and then force.
Yep.
And then attack.
Yep.
This is attack and then force and then boost.
Okay.
Because it establishes range 3, which is very useful for this character.
Right. And it's not super hard to hit. As that range 1 option, it benefits a lot.
It's better in
power you're putting on it.
Yeah, it's better in exceed mode, but it's not terrible on front side.
Right.
At 6 speed, it serves something like a cross purpose.
Right.
All right, and then attack.
Yeah, always attack.
Yeah, you don't spend this as force. You don't boost this.
Right.
You attack with it. Like you set this up as well as you can and play it.
So that use case that you described for the boost, that funny interaction with retreating bolts or with grasp, that's for when you recur it out of your hand or out of your discard pile with your exceed. It's not for when
you don't play it.
Never play it raw as a boost. Okay. And generally, even then, I'm probably looking more for speed boosts than for power boosts when I'm pulling from my discard pile, correct?
If you get light, you don't need, like, light alone is enough. Light and then whatever else.
Right.
Whatever else that's a thing you need to confirm. So either of those or a power boost.
Okay.
But the first thing you want to look for is some sort of speed boost, and then something worth confirming.
Right. That makes sense. And then in terms of with the normals, it sounds like the majority of them I'm playing is in attacks into the mid to late game once I've set up. But
yeah, you just play them as like you would normally.
Right.
They are just the normals.
Yeah, and maybe some considerations about like light is particularly important because I'm trying to confirm my power.
Yep.
Probably keep grasp, right? Because
you don't have a fast range one.
Yeah, and anything that I can that goes that fast is going to be useful for the power boosts.
Yeah, you make it six power.
Right.
It's really good. There is one thing I will say that may not immediately spring to mind. Your blocks are really good because you have that additional force in the kit.
Right.
Because of the ultras, so you can spend a bit more aggressively on block than you might otherwise.
So I'm slightly tankier than then I would appear from these cards.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
because if you block, you can spend the extra
Right.
because it's you've got the extra ultra, so it's an extra 2 force in the kit.
Right. Okay, that makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, but otherwise you just play the normals as normal. Light is good because you can, but also defend is good. For the same reason the stun immunity is.
Yep.
Um, you know, anything that makes things more consistent
More
is of
consistent.
value.
You get more value out of it because of your crazy power boosts. That makes sense to me. Okay.
Yep. And reading, as always, is a silly card.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, yeah, like if you can read, block, and explosive shot it,
Right. That's another way to lose a friend.
yeah. Or turn one, recross, spend 3, electro charge.
Yeah, it's a, but they're probably holding it, right? Like I was gonna say, it's risky, but they're probably holding it to get out of the explosive shot
Or to like boost it to move in.
to run in. Sure, yeah, cross is kind of a common mulligan to look
Yeah,
for. And
yeah,
the mulligans that I'm looking for are some as much of my turn one mix up as I can. Probably explosive shot. Where's my explorb? Some ultra to spend. All the
yeah.
stuff that you've been talking about.
Explosive shot, electro charge, and ultra, and then some other stuff.
Yep,
The other stuff is less important.
yep, that makes sense. Um,
Even really, even really, electro charge is less important.
right.
But you want to play explosive shot every time turn one. Uh, the opponent will cross out of it some amount of time, but then they're forced to spend resources to move in anyway.
Right, and they just spent the thing that they would use as force to move in, or use as a boost to move in cheaply with run,
Um,
by
unless
spending the
they're
cross.
from unless they're in season 7
True. Yep. True.
or 6.
Or 6. Yeah. For a good chunk of the game, of
Yes.
the game's cast, that's not a consideration. That's true though. Um. Okay. So when I'm doing matchup prep as fight, I'm looking for answers to this card, right? Like that is priority one is like
Yes.
what do they have that stops this card? Deal with it, stop it however I can. That's central to my game plan. It
Yep.
sounds like any of their above curve options at all, because if I'm trying to confirm power, my speed is
Yep.
sensitive. I really have to watch out for any DPs or anything like that. Any other cards?
Well, so if you don't have to be super worried about the above curve cards. You just have to make sure you bait them because each strike for you is worth so much more.
Right.
Um, so same thing would be for range one spikes because if you go for a slow card and invest on it, uh, the range one spike,
Right.
stuff that beats your sweep with +3 power.
Perfect. Right. So
Uh, it,
anything that does the stuff that normals don't normally have to contend with. So anything that breaks the
yeah,
speed curve, anything that does that most characters can't deal with, like a range one spike, or most
yeah,
characters can't do, like a range one spike that changes the interactions. Look for those so that you can play normals, man.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and you don't have to even like worry about them super much. Just know they're there and think about how you're going to play around them. Because
Right.
the normals, despite not being able to do those things, can almost always cover those things.
Right. Okay. Um. So now you have now described, I think, in unless you have more things about what Fight should
No,
be doing in his game. You've now described probably like the how to do Fight stuff. Now I'm Fight's opponent. I'm terrified of all the Fight stuff that you're telling me about. I'm doing something to
for
stop it. What is it,
yep.
and how does Fight get around what they're trying to do to stop it?
Well, the first thing, and I think it should be obvious, will be negating explosive shot.
Yes.
If you play around explosive shot, you parry it. Once both copies are down, Fight no longer has a busted ass card.
Right.
Uh, any way you can make him spend force to move, or spend force on things that aren't using it for power,
Yeah.
is good for you. Um, if you've got like ranged tools and you move out, like that can be a thing. Because he only has, he has explosive shot, but it doesn't hit 6. And at
Right.
6 he has electro charge, but like he only has 2 copies of electro charge. It's not
Right.
the best card.
He's
If
not
you're Ryu,
he's not a dedicated ranger. He's not like despite sort of the
yeah,
shape of his kit, he would lose to Ken spamming Hadouken over and over again or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, or even Ryu,
Right.
like he'll outtrade the first 2, and then he has to eat the rest of them.
Right.
But or move in really close. Now, if you're moving in close, you have to be very confident in your range 1 game.
Right.
You got to think about what he's doing, but a lot of what he's doing at range 1 is within the normals paradigm.
Right. Just
So,
bigger and stronger.
yes, but not faster most of the time.
Right.
So, if you have some speed nonsense, he is a speed sensitive character. You
Right.
can He's particularly so he's particularly afraid of the character shape he worries about is characters that are evasive. He doesn't really care about characters that trade. Like ideally he doesn't trade, but ideally no one trades in Exceed. But the
Right.
characters he cares about are the ones that can sort of slip past him,
Right. Make him
dodge his
miss.
attack.
Yeah, he deny him resources. I mean that like you can't stop him from getting resources with all of his boosts, but
Yeah,
a
deny
lot
him
of
the payouts of them.
yeah, and but a lot of his boosts, or I'm sorry, a lot of his gauge generation is on hit effects. So
Yes.
if you can keep him from you're keeping him from getting gauge from the hit, he's spending force to try to drop it to try to make that hit strong. But also a lot of
To end the
times,
game.
yeah, but
Yeah.
also a lot of times they're he's getting even more resources on hit. So anything you can do to dodge him sounds very strong.
Yes. And
Gotcha.
also, as Fight is playing, he is spending a lot of resources. A lot of stuff is going to his discard.
Oh,
Keep track
so
of that.
information management. Gotcha.
Yeah, as Fight, you want to manage your information well. You don't want to drop your second copy of something, you know? Or you want to be aware of what you're dropping, so what EXs are threatened or whatever.
Right, of
So,
course.
against Fight, you pay attention to what he's spending. He's he's got to be really careful about what he's spending because if he's not careful, he's telling you what he's playing.
Right.
He's dropped both assaults and he's got 1 dive in discard. All right, I can play around this. I'll play an EX assault or something,
Right.
or I'll play assault.
Yeah, I'll deal with his increasingly telegraphed range 3 play by looking at what he's already spent his force because he's dropping so much. And the hope on
Yeah,
fight side is that he's spending so much hitting you in a way that okay, yeah, by the time I've given you all the hand information that you need to beat me, you're dead already.
you're at 6 life, and I have grasp and 3 force available.
Right. Yeah. Eventually, it won't
Yeah,
matter whether you know it's coming because what's coming is your inevitable death.
yeah, and
Right.
it's important to note that he might know this. He might be aware of what he's telegraphing, and he might be baiting you,
Very
and
true.
that will happen.
Yep.
But that's Exceed.
Yep.
That's playing
Yep.
against a good player. They
Yep.
know what they're telegraphing, but you pay attention to it with Fight because it happens quickly. It happens a lot quicker than other characters, and he can be really vulnerable to reading. Now he
Oh,
probably won't spend on a reading because he doesn't because he's going to lose that strike.
right.
But forcing him to play an option and lose a strike can be rough.
Definitely. Okay. That all makes sense.
Also, parries. If he's
Yes.
got 2 gauge and you're worried about an ultra or you're worried about explosive shot or whatever, just parry it.
Right.
You're not gonna. He's gonna hit you hard through it. He likes hitting. Block is not good into him.
Right. A season 6 character is kind of an interesting example because they are maybe more likely than most to have a lot of interesting dodge shapes that they could leverage against this kit, but they also don't have parry.
Oh, that's right. They don't have parry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so those matchups in particular might be very
the
oddly shaped.
weird shit. Yeah,
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Um, All right. Anything else on Fight himself before I ask you the requisite question about other characters like him?
So, uh, okay, with fight, you just play with your heart. 9 power sweep is baller. If you land a 9 power sweep, it doesn't matter what the life says. You've won the game.
You've won the game, yeah. So this is a useful thing to circle back to that at the beginning of this lesson we discussed that we're playing to win, and uh, if it's not how you want to play, don't play it that way. Uh, Winning is fight also means making cool plays,
Yeah,
and doing cool things. So
explosive explosive shot feels fantastic to land,
right,
despite being very easy to land. It's very gratifying.
right,
Hitting
yes,
things with lots of power is very satisfying, and that's
yeah.
all he does.
The big red number on his cards uh, are reason enough to play them. The fact that he's good as well and can win games with them, that's like a bonus.
Yeah, that's like something. That's whatever. Who
Right.
cares?
Yeah, who cares?
He's also yeah. So, but yeah, the important thing is if you have fun, you are more likely to play more, and the more
Mhm.
you play, the better you get.
Definitely.
This is the common rule for learning anything, particularly competitive things. Make sure you have fun with it because the more you have fun, the more likely you are to practice. The more likely you are to practice, the better you'll be.
Yes. Yep. So that
Yeah,
is true of
ev- that's
exceed.
everyone.
Definitely, it's true of everything. So more specifically though, it's true of exceed, but it's also true of fight. But it's also true of the line of play you play with fight. If you
Yeah,
need to play some slightly memey stuff in order to enjoy the game, in the long term, what that is just playing to win still. Because what
yeah,
you're playing to keep yourself playing, and that is playing to win. Your win
yeah,
rate will go very, very low in tournament if you don't enter tournaments.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
But yeah,
keep yourself enjoying the game is super good advice.
I think that's about all I have to say for fight.
Right, awesome.
I love his art. I think his art is and his frames are like super cool.
Oh, it's
I
really
love
awesome.
the
Yeah.
like, I love it so much.
Oh yeah.
The
I the
Cronenbergian.
Yeah, no, yeah, all of the sort of like visceral kind of alien vibes on it. It's very odd for Exceed. Like this is not this game's art style
Right?
generally.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. So really briefly as we wrap up here, any other characters who fit a play style similar to Fight that people who are really into Fight might want to try out, or if they're already into these characters, Fight would be a good choice if they haven't taken a look at him.
so I've got a bit of an odd pick, but I like Sagat for that. Sagat is a character that can play up close, he can play at distance. He's
Right.
not married to either. He
Right.
has distinctive ranged tools in his Tiger Shot and Low Tiger Shot,
Yeah,
which mimic.
I can see the comparison
Yep,
between Tiger Shot and Explosive Shot, especially.
yeah, and he has these close range tools. He's a bit more like he's less. He has less power. He doesn't, but in his ability, but his attacks tend to be better. He has better attacks than Fight does
Right.
on average. So I think if you like Fight, Sagat's a good one to give a go. No one else in season 4 really matches his thing, which makes sense.
Yep.
Um, Platinum and Rachel in season 5 are both resource and boost management rangers and close range characters.
Yep.
They can flip between the two quite well. Uh, Platinum is more on the speed and randomness side. Rachel is more on the resource management and more of a zoner.
Right.
Um, Neither of them hit as hard as he does. And they're both more evasive, but I think they both have that same sort of uh, speed sensitive, uh, heavy boost kit kind of play.
Right.
Um, don't know if there's anyone in season 6 because I don't know season 6 very well because I'm a bad person to give a lecture. Um, Season 7, May has they hit you very hard, and so does Soul.
Yep.
May and Soul both want to explode you to a million pieces. Eno, is a mid-range character, moves around a lot, hits relatively hard. Amelia, surprisingly, I think she's really invested in stunning the opponent,
Yep.
which I think is not direct. Like her kit is not directly similar to fights, but she has a lot of tools that if I saw them in fights kit, I'd be like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Right. Okay. That
And
makes
then
sense.
and then I think that's everyone off the top of my head.
All right. Awesome.
Uh,
Yeah. So
yeah,
if you are a fan of any of those characters, if you're just getting into Exceed through Guilty Gear Strive, the board game, and you've picked up those characters, maybe take a look back into season 4 and pick up Fight, see what he does. I will
he
say,
shoot gun.
yeah, he shoot various gun. Um,
Mm,
Reggie, I mentioned this prior to the lesson starting before we were on the air that I was looking forward to this lesson because I didn't have any particular feelings about Fight and didn't super care about him. Um, he seems cool. I want to give him a try now. So I feel like mission accomplished on that. That you've got at least one
big number
convert.
hit big.
Yeah,
Big number hit. Yeah,
seems like a fun time to me.
yeah. And I don't. So I think part of the appeal of Fight is that his game plan is actually quite simple.
Yep.
You know, play the normals game, hit hard with fireballs, not at the normals game.
Yep.
It's just in the resource management execution of it that the difficulty and skill expression comes in, which
Right.
I think is cool. Oh, if you like that the resource management skill expression side, I should mention Ramlethal in season 7 as well.
Okay.
She has that sort of her gameplay is not very similar to Fight, but she does have that resource spend
Right.
and management
The
element to it.
the mark of a good Ramlethal player and a good Fight player is common between the two of them is resource
Yeah,
management. Gotcha.
how they manage their resources both in hand and gauge. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Cool. All right. Um, well, with that, Reggie, I think if that's everything, thank you again so much for being willing to sit down with me and teach me this character. I'm really looking forward to giving him a try.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And for
I'll
everybody
s-
watching, thank you as well. And
mm,
I will see you all soon.
bye.